over the world, looking for you.
We took it all apart, but I'm wishing I'd stay in the back room, something in the we didn't wanna call it too early. Now it seems looking big. We took it all apart, but I'm wishing I'd stay in the back room, something in the
Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Satar and I will show you guys about our background of Malaysia. Malaysia consists of two regional divisions of Malaysia, which are known as West Malaysia and East Malaysia. West Malaysia is the southern third of the Malaya Peninsula in Southeast Asia and East Malaysia. It is situated in the northern district of Borneo Island, north to Thailand, east to the South China Sea, south to Singapore, west to Malaysia, and west to the Malacca Straits. East Malaysia is bordered to the south by Indonesia, to the west and north by the South China Sea, and the northeast by the Sulu Sea. East Malaysia concludes the Malaysia state of Sabah, Sarawak, and the Federal Territory of Labuan. These places are located on the island of Borneo. Borneo is the largest island in the world and the location is separate with East Malaysia by the South China Sea. This is because Sabah Sarawak have a nice beach and becoming an interesting place that can be used to attract the tourism. And extra, it can earn our country income. Borneo has some of oldest and many biodiverse rainforests. This western coast of the peninsula is distinguished by many mangrove forests and flat area. The eastern coast characterizes by many beautiful beaches. The inland is composed mostly of mountains and jungle. The highest peak in Malaysia, Mount Kinabalu, is situated on the Sabah, the island of Borneo. Peninsula Malaysia is located midway by Thailand and Singapore is situated on Borneo in the south and part of Sabah and Sarawak. Western Malaysia is also known as the Peninsular and it is situated just above the equator and just below it is Borneo. Borneo's hugest island is shared with Indonesia called Kalimantan Island and Brunei. The northern Philippines is bordered by which still maintains claims over parts of Borneo by sea. The capital city is Kuala Lumpur, a downtown metropolis with over 1.6 million people. Population in Malaysia is popular with multiracial and reached at 10.9 million that consists of male racial and other racial like Malay, Chinese and Indians and many more. Malaysia have special ethnic at Sabah and Sarawak. They are living on their lifestyle, for example ethnic Bajau, Murut, Kadazan and so on. In Malaysia, there are various forms of religion that represent the types of races at there. We also have religion which Malay practice Islam, Chinese have a Buddhism and India have a Hindu. The structured language of Malaysia, Bahasa Malaysia. Bahasa Malaysia is the language that people still use. It is an old language in the South Pacific with early origins and it's easy to learn or practice. People can get out here with English, but it is the real rules are that older Malaysians speak English better than younger people and use English to be on the curriculum in school, but it is rarely available these days. Most remote place in Asia, Malaysia has one of the highest living standards, largely due to its expanding manufacturing sector, which propelled the country between 1987 and 1997 to an 8 and 9% annual growth rate. During the Asian financial crisis of 1997 and 98, growth contracted and the government was forced to slash spending on and postpone several big projects on infrastructure. Unemployment and interest rates have risen, forcing thousands of foreign workers to leave the country, many of them from Indonesia in 1999.
The statistics show the average inflation rate in Malaysia from 2010 to 2019, with projects up 2025. In 2018, the average inflation rate Malaysia amounted to about 0.66%. Compared to the previous year, Malaysia's economy is slowly recovering. The inflation rate is the annual rate of increase of the price index, normally the consumer price index over time. If the same item bought today for $1 is bought again 1 year from now, but for $1.03, then the inflation rate is at 3%. Generally, a low inflation rate is sought by every country, and a rate of 3% is as is estimated from Malaysia in the next few years. Though is considered low, however, there was a slight rise in Malaysia inflation rate from close to 2% in 2010 to a little over 3% in 2011. In 2012, it dropped back down its normal rate, but future estimates predict a slight increase once again. Perhaps this increase has come from initial worries concerning the country's slowing economy as the country's GDP grows slow from 7.43% in 2010 to 5.19% in 2011, or its negative budget balance in relation to GDP, which was at its recent worst in 2010, at decreased for negative 4.66%. At the same time, the country's national debt was also rising, but predictions show that this trend is reversing. Yet the economic outlook and inflation rate still appear stable for the future of Malaysia, and the inflation rate below the global inflation rate. Furthermore, the country's GDP continues to rise and total $326.93 billion in 2013. These statistics show the unemployment rate in Malaysia from 2010 to 2020. In 2020, the unemployment rate in Malaysia was at approximately 3.38%. Unemployment in Malaysia unemployment is relatively low and stable around the 3%, which means the population is experiencing close to full employment. The country reached its lowest level of unemployment in 2014, which a rate of 2.85%. Malaysia's vibrant economy is considered one of the strong in Southeast Asia. Together with years of political stability, it has brought safety such a low unemployment rate and good growth rate each year. Industry has been a strong contributor to GDP and currently provides around 30% of employment opportunities, but even more, about 50% of GDP is generated by the service sector. Given the country's strong and growing economy, average GDP per capita is growing at increasing rate as well. However, despite this positive statistic, new reports state that the number of job seekers and those unemployment, the 3% are generally young people, both graduates and non-graduates, who have had trouble entering the job market. Because of this, the Malaysian government is encouraging companies to open up employment opportunities specifically specifically to young adults, the favorable economic climate should help, yet there have also been some complaints about underemployment and gender discrimination within the country.
Assalamualaikum, my name is SHARIFAH FARAH MUSTAZA from AIYYO3G. Today I would like to explain about the trend and issue. In 2010, the unemployment rate was 3.25% in Malaysia. The trend then started to decline until 2014. Although it rose a bit by 0.07% for 2012 to 2013, with a rate of 2.85%, then country achieved the lowest rate of unemployment in 2014. This is because Malaysia growing economy is known to be one of the strongest in the Southeast Asia. Along with decades of political prosperity, like low unemployment and fast growth rate have also contributed last year. Usually, due to increased competition, the unemployment rate in developed countries is high than in developing countries. Observation indicates that young unemployment in both countries was highest than the overall rate of unemployment, which suggests that young people face more difficulties than adults looking for jobs. In 2019, the unemployment rate was 3.0%. This revealed that in 2019, there were around 500,000 people who were unemployed. The industry also made a great contribution to GDP, providing about 3% of employment opportunities at present. Given the country capacity and growing company, the capital GDP is also scarce and unemployed are typical rate in 2019 was not impacted by the negative effect of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the workforce metrics are projected to be affected by 2020. That's all for me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Assg. So I'm going to present about inflation trend in issues. Inflation rate mean the percentage is increase or decrease in prices during a time to time. For usually, it specified a period time like a month or a year. The percentage explain how quickly prices rise during the period. Every country have their inflation rate, no matter what type of the country. For example, our group present about Malaysia. Inflation is when the amount of the highest product and a duty was start scale skyward. This is a report by Amado 2012 showed the standard of living costs may decrease because we need to savings for good and just purchase the important things. In 2002, Cheng and Tan was said that Malaysia's inflation rate is better overcome in the perfect way when our country faced the financial crisis related to other countries that faced high inflation during that period. According to the Trading Economic Global Macro Models and Expectation, the following years, inflation rate in Malaysia is expected to be 2.4% by the end of this quarter.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is FARHANA binti Muhammad SAUFFIE from AM110 Group 3G. Today I will present about public policy that our chosen country, which is Malaysian. Public policy has been described as a gadget of guides of action, regulatory measure, legal guidelines, guiding ideas regarding any difficult of public difficulty, promulgate via ways of mean any government entity, branch or any of its rightful representative. In Malaysia, public policy formulates the social shape of the country, and that destiny calls for a wishes of the country as an entire was taking into account of the diverse ethnicity of the country and the near proximity of the social and political structure of the country. At the federal level, the legislative electricity is based in the bicameral parliament headed via ways of mean of the Yang di-Pertua Agong and contents of Dewan Negara, House of Senate, and Dewan Rakyat, House of Representative. The distribution of lawmaking authorities among the federal and state government is enumerated in the 9th schedule of the Federal Constitution, extensively set out in the Federal List, State List, and Concurrent List. In other words, public coverage elements into how selections are made. When courts and lawmakers remember whether to by skip a law, supplying something precedents or rules in a sure ways, they achieve this due to public's coverage and that they concurrently from publics. For example, when court refuse to put into effect contract associated with unlawful conduct, which including refusing to put into effect a settlement for prostitutions on a settlement to buy stolen goods, there is an instance of a public coverage choice. The courts do not need to inspire wrongful conduct like human moving into unlawful contracts. Okay, for another example of public policy is Malaysia is the Malaysian authorities have formulated and carried out numerous guidelines to cope with particular trouble or some those are privatization policy. So over the years, the Malaysian authorities have formulated and applied numerous public rules which consist among others the privatization policy, national welfare policy, Malaysian industrial policy, national agriculture policy, national education of in Israel, and the result instrumental social financial improvement with the inside of the country. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is BALQIS binti Muhammad AMINUDEN. So I'm gonna explain about the suitable policies or measures to control the problem of inflation and unemployment in Malaysia. Basically, there are two policies to reduce unemployment, which is the supply side and the demand side. Demand side policies are critical when there is a recession and rise in cyclical unemployment. For example, the first one is fiscal policy. Fiscal policy can decrease unemployment by helping to increase aggregate demand and the rate of economic growth. Government will need to pursue expansionary fiscal policy, which involves cutting taxes and increasing government spending. Lower taxes increase disposable income and therefore help to increase consumption, leading to higher aggregate demand. Next is monetary policy, which will require cutting interest rates. Lower rates minimize the cost of interest and allow consumers to invest and save. This raises aggregate demand, which can also help raise GDP and increasing the shortage of demand and employment. Also, lower interest rates will reduce the exchange rate and make exports more competitive. In some situations, higher interest rates could be unsuccessful in increased supply. More microeconomic issues are dealt by supply-side policies. They do not seek to increase overall aggregate demand, but they seek to solve labor market imperfections and minimize unemployment caused by supply-side causes. Unemployment on the supply side covers frictional, systemic, and classical, which is the real wage. Firstly, there is teaching and schooling. The objective is to provide long-term unemployed people with new skills that enable them to find jobs in developing industries, such as retraining unemployed skilled workers to provide basic IT skills that help them find work in the service industry. However, While having education and training schemes, the unemployed can be reluctant or unable to develop new skills. At best, it will take several years to cut frictional, structural, and classical unemployment. Secondly, it will diminish the strength of labor unions. If unions negotiate wages higher than the cost of market clearing, they would induce actual wage unemployment. A reduction in trade union power, or the reduction in minimum pay, in this case, will help to fix this real wage poverty. Next are education subsidies. This helps to teach them new confidence and job training. It can indeed be very costly and could enable businesses to essentially substitute long-term unemployment for existing employees in order to benefit from tax cuts. Afterwards, it is important to improve the flexibility of the labour market. It is argued that higher systemic unemployment rates in Malaysia are due to rigid labour, which is the condition in the first place discourage companies from hiring employees. To begin, they can abolish full working weeks and making it easier to recruit and firing staff, so further job growth can be facilitated. However, a spike in transient jobs and greater instability in the workplace may be caused by enhanced resilience throughout the labour market. In fact, it is also one of the measures to limit supply sides of inflation to be strict regarding benefit requirements. In making the unemployed seek a job or risk losing benefits, government should take more proactive role. The government may guarantee a public sector job after a certain time, such as cleaning streets. This could, however, mean that the government ends up hiring thousands of workers, which is very wasteful and unproductive. Next is to have full day of work. A maximum working week of about 35 hours has been suggested to result in firms needing to recruit more staff and reduce unemployment. A maximum working week, however, may increase the cost of the company, and therefore they are not willing to hire more. There is also no certainty that by employing more, the company would respond to a cut in hours and may try to increase productivity. Finally, geographic mobility also must be improved. Often in certain regions, those unemployed are more concentrated by the government. The government could give tax breaks to companies set up in impoverished regions in order to overcome these geographic unemployment issues. Instead, they can provide financial assistance to unemployed workers who are moving to certain areas, such as hiring their cost of rent.
For the conclusion, since both inflation and unemployment are a common phenomenon, it is a vital activity properly examine the truth and the relationship between these variables. We clearly analyze the trade-off relationship between inflation and unemployment in the long term, as well as the causal trend, as we did in this report. Eventually, this study uncovered evidence of Malaysia's trade-off relationship between inflation and unemployment. Given the importance of these two macroeconomic variables, variables to economic stability, it is hoped that from time to time, more relevant research can be carried out periodically to ensure that the future economic policy preparation is smooth and successful. In order to get better outcomes, future studies may need to consider the probability of structural breaks occurring in the pattern and the associated macroeconomic variables. Thank you.